doing here is making a couple of lampshades. This is roughly the shape I want to achieve, all right, out of this screen wire. So I've got two layers of screen wire. One is steel and the other is bronze. And when you, in the daylight, it's sparkly behind the steel. And anyway, so that's what I'm doing. And right now I'm putting these little dots of solder just to hold the two pieces together, so they become kind of one sheet. All right. Then I will shape that into this shape right here. Around the perimeter, before I do that, is going to get this little lead channel that I've created out of some flat lead that I bought. It's just a piece of, cut it 1/2 inch wide and made a U channel. So that will be the perimeter of that. All right, so I'm going to show you a simulation of what's going on around the perimeter of this. Here's a small, it was a piece of lead. It was twice that wide and flat, and I've folded it to make a little channel. You can see there's a channel in there. All right, and that is what is going around the perimeter of this, that what is going to be a shade. So you see how the screen wire gets slid in there, and then what happens is it gets soldered, and that takes a while, but it gets soldered together, and then it's actually bonded then to the screen. So once that's done, okay, you kind of have this smooth and ugly piece of lead, and it doesn't look very nice, particularly when you have, you know, some solder and stuff on there. So with that on, you know, so it's soldered. This one isn't, but let's say it was soldered onto the edge of that, and all flat. So it looked kind of smooth and uninteresting. So what happens then, after it's all soldered together, you have to go around the perimeter like this and put some texture to that, make it look like something other than smooth lead, which is what it was. So then here is the finished product after it's been hammered. It takes about 15 minutes to get around there. Then I'll shape it into that shape that the tin foil is. And then I have to make out of, there's a sheet of copper over there that I'll make the center cap. It'll go right here, and that's the part that will fasten to the lamp itself. You know, where the finial goes through, and you screw on the finial and it holds onto the lamp. So this is kind of flimsy, right? But when this is soldered, and when it's got the little cap in the center, and when it has the undulations, and when I do some, you know, little patina work on it, if I do any, it will become stiff, much stiffer. Not stiff like a, you know, piece of sheet metal, but it'll be much stiffer. So it'll hold its form and be a shade. But it's also not totally a shade because it allows a little bit of light to come through, so you'll be able to see underneath. So the bulb has to be kind of a pretty one, you know, not just your standard bulb. So I'm soldering this lead rim onto the screen wire. Before, I used to use the copper foil as if it were a piece of leaded glass, and then, you know, build up the edge with solder. But that took forever, for one, and also it took masses of solder. So going this route Much better. You saw me forming these two copper discs into the top and bottom cap, and this shade then will get sandwiched between there, all right, and then formed in a way that I'll show you. So there's the bottom, okay, and I have a little mark there. You can't see this, but there's a little V notch, and those have to line up because that's how the thing has been shaped. It's not done on a machine that has all 6 areas, you know, exactly the same. So then this goes on here, big pizza, okay? And I have that notch facing forward, so I'm going to get this one with the notch facing forward, so that way it meshes in the way it was intended to, all right? And washer, and nut, okay, and I'm just doing kind of a little bit of a start there. So as I look at this, I'm going to be folding down when it radiates clear out to the rim here. The downward fold is going to be quite large. Up here it's very tiny, and then it goes up in that one, and then it goes down in that one, goes up in that one, down in this one, like so. Okay, and then up, and then down, and help it a little bit up there. Gradually, we get this worked into the shape we want. You know, you have to bend the screen and the rim. And remember that it's, it's a steel layer in this one, and then on the underside it's a bronze layer of, screen wire. So that is about right. All the while I'm tightening that up, shaping it, this now is allowed to get closer and closer. So I'm just going to tighten that up to the limit. So that's now very tight. And I just want to do one last bit of shaping here. It doesn't spin around anymore. Okay. And after it's all done, even after it's got patina and everything, if it isn't perfect, you can shape it a little bit. But when I do the patina, what's cool about all that and the finish, this is a little bit flimsy, but it will get a lot stiffer from the heat process, and the lacquer itself will stiffen its own, but mainly from the heat and the spritzing with the patina stuff. So I've put a couple of rivets in here already. I didn't want to have it on film in case something screwed up, but it didn't, and this is, I've been doing this a few times already. And then we'll just drill this hole out. These rivets are a pretty close fit, and they need to be, so that they grip the side of the hole. And this is a solid rod. It's actually just a forming stake that I've polished up the top edge. Just sanded it, not really polished. Okay, so the rivet goes in, and by the way, I had to cut those off just a little bit because they're a little long. I could have gotten shorter ones, but I really wasn't sure what I needed. So the first step is kind of pound that stuff down around the rivet, and then you can see in the top of this driver there's a small hole and then a domed impression. The domed impression goes on it now. It's kind of one tool does both. You keep that over that solid rod and then drive that down, and it rounds that rivet over and holds that in place. First thing I'm doing here, you see that smoke coming off? Yeah, I think there's some oil and stuff on the screen wire. So that has an effect. And we don't want that effect. Just heat up, get rid of the oil for the most part. Okay? The heat just accelerates the reaction. This is peroxide, hydrogen peroxide, and water, and salt. I'm sorry, it's just hydrogen peroxide and salt. That's it. You squirt that on there, and you can see it almost immediately gets rusty. That's what we're after, is a rusty patina. This one over here is the same process, but if you come around into the light, you'll see that it's not quite, the colors are not quite as dramatic, and that's mainly because I was going to school on this one. Still, you see some reds and whites kind of going on. Here's a good spot right here.
Yeah, you still see beautiful colors, different colors.
Yeah, you do. But I think what happened was I was kind of being conservative here and not really caking on the juice, and you know, so it just didn't quite get all the color that the other one
Still
did.
looks great to me.
I'm just putting some texture to this smooth copper pipe. It's for the purpose of, you know, wiring to the socket for a lamp. And this is doing two things. Makes that smooth pipe look like something a little more interesting than just a smooth pipe. And then also, it work hardens it, so it's pretty soft, and that's what makes it easy to bend. And then just beating it up like this, and all the work you do to it makes it stiffer. So when this is all done, I'll clean it really well, and then I'll use some liver of sulfur on it, and it'll make it a nice, like a gun blue, dark, like a gun blue color. So this little curlicue is going on a different lamp. I just decided that this particular one I wanted to put a greenish blue patina on it. So cupric nitrate and water, a little zinc nitrate, I think it is, dissolved in water, and fire makes green patina.